Hello, welcome to Tuesday Live. I am Omini Odan. The Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, adopted by our countries in 2015, are a shared vision to end poverty, rescue the planet, and build a peaceful world. 5 years down the line, there are reported progress in matters of extreme poverty and child mortality rates, access to energy, education, and decent work. There are, however, concerns over rising cases of hunger, increase in greenhouse gas emissions, and dangers of climate change, conflict, inequality, finance gap, and injustice. The concerns that are buttressed with the 2020 UN's Decade of Action calls for accelerating sustainable solutions to all the world's biggest challenges, especially given that only 10 years left to achieve the goals by the year 2030 deadline. What is the performance of countries like in achieving the goals? What is the story of Nigeria for other countries to emulate? Answers and more tonight on Tuesday Live. As the tradition of the program, we shall take you round some states of the Federation to get first-hand information on the impact of the SDGs on the targeted groups. But first, this background report by Onenge Fineface.
Adopted by countries of the world, Sustainable Development Goals are products of a shared global vision to end poverty, rescue and protect planet Earth, and build a peaceful world for all to live in. The SDGs hope to end hunger through improved food security, ensure health and well-being, enhance equitable quality education, gender equality, and empowerment of women and girls. SDGs seek to manage water and sanitation better, make modern energy affordable and available for all, advance economic growth, and provide decent jobs for all, while building resilient infrastructure for industrialization. In addition, Sustainable Development Goals hope to eliminate the limitations of inequality, ensure safe human settlements, achieve balance in production and consumption of goods and services, while mitigating the impact of climate change. Conserving marine ecosystem, protecting biodiversity, and land resources are crucial concerns of the goals. At the core of the SDGs is the need to promote peace, provide access to justice, make all development plans and programs inclusive and sustainable, at the same time building global partnerships to achieve the targets of the goals by the year 2030.
It means we are completely inclusive. And SDG says no one should be left out.
Nigeria may not have made quantum leap in achieving the SDGs, but efforts are being made to advance livelihoods of citizens. Social investment programs to encourage enrollment into schools, government-backed soft loans to grow micro, small, and medium enterprises, policies like the ban on importation of some goods and border closure are already stimulating greater investment in agriculture and manufacturing in the country. Going by the realities of violent crisis in several countries of the world, rise in the levels of greenhouse gas emissions and other precursors of climate change, one could dare to say it is not yet Uhuru in the race to a peaceful, sustainable, and inclusive world by the year 2030.
Getting to know what the people at that level need will help Nigeria to plan better on achieving the next 10 years. If we ignore that community level, I'm not sure we're going to make much of an impact with the SDGs as well.
The interest of SDG is to ensure that all of us are alive, happy, doing the things we are most capable of doing.
2020 begins the decade of action with only 10 years left to 2030. A decade that calls for action from governments, businesses, civil society and individuals everywhere to mobilize citizens and generate innovative ideas to transform the world, end extreme poverty, win the race against climate change, conquer injustice and emplace gender equality. In Abuja, on Nigerian Fine Face, NTA News.
You say it's the countdown to achieving the set targets of the SDGs. So tonight, sustain the conversation on Decade of Action for Sustainable Development Goals. It's Tuesday Live, and at some point on the course of the program, our phone lines will be open. You put in your calls, raise your concerns, and ask your questions, and we shall address them. And in doing this, please turn down the volume of your television set to avoid the hallback or echo. Also, our Twitter handle tonight is @TuesdayLiveNTA. Send in your tweets, and as much as time will allow, we'll take them and also address them. Well, on Engaged Fan Face background that set the tone for the takeoff of the program tonight, focused on sustaining the conversation on Decade of Action on SDGs. My guests, United Nations Deputy Secretary General, Amina Mohammed. Good to have you on the program tonight.
It's great to be with you.
Godwin Obaseki, Governor of Edo State, standing in for the chairman, Nigeria's Governors Forum, Governor Kayode Fayemi of Ekiti State. Good to have you on the program tonight.
Thank you very much.
Zainab Ahmed, Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning. It's a pleasure having you on the program.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. Professor Jibril Ibrahim, Senior Fellow, Center for Democracy and Development. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Good to go. Well, let me take the first shot on Amina. And I remember vividly in one of your discourse, I picked it and I said I will remind you, linking it to exiting MDGs and entering into the MDGs into SDGs. You said the Sustainable Development Goals has jumped from the United Nations General Assembly Hall to communities across the world. They are taking hold among policymakers and in global public awareness. So now, what is the value of international cooperation and what does it really mean across regions and borders?
Well, great question. When we discussed that, it was about a paradigm shift for development. We were moving from just looking at the Millennium Development Goals in the social sector to one that really talked about inclusive economies, took care of the environment, and was particularly concerned about how we would do this, building on strong institutions and, of course, partnerships. International cooperation birthed the Sustainable Development Goals. It gave them the ambition, the 193 states that signed on to it. International cooperation helps us now to really lift what is needed to bring the investments, to bring the knowledge, to bring the partnerships, to implement the Sustainable Development Goals. What does this mean for regions and across borders? The complexities that we're facing today, no country is an island. It is about globalization. It's not very just, but it is about that. Many of the issues we have across border, whether we talk about climate change, conflict, humanitarian crises, it comes across the border without any expectation and does cause clearly many more demands on a state than just what you have to do as a country. And so you need international cooperation for that. And the UN provides the space to convene for those issues, whether they are health, their education, it's the economy, and to bring together partners that can help to address some of these major challenges.
Okay, moving forward, you also refer to the MDGs in conclusion as half full, but lessons learned.
Yes.
And moving into SDGs, you talked about the fact that it is ambitious with set targets. How do you mean?
Well, as I said, when we looked at the MDGs, we really looked at maternal mortality and education. We did sort of talk about reducing poverty, but we didn't really get to what it meant to have an inclusive economy. We didn't talk about inequalities. We didn't speak to the rights of an agenda that would give basic services of water, of health. And we certainly were not cognizant so much of how much climate change would affect what we were talking about. So the ambitions as a whole of development is what we want to respond to, and not just a piece of it. On the social agenda, if you look at the first 6 goals of our 17, that's the unfinished business of the MDGs. And what we hope is that if you really are investing in goals 7 to 15, you will have the revenues, the wherewithal to deliver on the first 6, reducing poverty and hunger, looking at health and education and water supply, and most importantly, gender equality.
Okay. Governor Basaki, within the Nigerian Governors Forum, we're talking about completely getting everybody involved. Now, what are we getting at flanks of the country? It looks as though we hear so much at the center. What is happening at the flanks? Talking about the states.
Thank you. It all happens in the states. You see, because at the subnational level, that's where the buck finally ends or falls. Because it's at the states, the local governments, that's where you experience climate change, that's where you experience inequalities, that's where you see declining livelihoods, that's where you see, it's a fragile state system, conflicts. It's really unfortunate what happened in Borno yesterday. Sympathies to our colleague governor of Borno State and the people of Borno. It's in the states you find human trafficking, you find all the humanitarian crisis we talk about. So we governors have to deal with those challenges on a daily basis. And so for us, the SDG cannot and should not just be another global concept. It must be a concept we own. It has to be part of our planning process. It has to be part of our agenda setting for our people. And that's what the NGF is about. That's what we do at our National Economic Council meetings on a monthly basis, where we look at those key issues that the SDGs are focused on. So specifically, while not looking at talking about the numbers, about the SDG, in terms of their numbers, but the concepts are all embroiled in our planning process.
Okay. Honourable Minister, let's look at the perspective of, if you look at the domain of climate change, for instance, you hear so much about nationally determined goals in mitigating climate change. Taking it to SDGs now, being at the planning hub in Nigeria, what are the funding gaps, and how do you lace this with domestic resources aligned to achieve more skills?
Well, to start with, when we did the current national plan that we're implementing, the ERGP, we made sure that the SDGs were mainstreamed within the plan. As a matter of fact, when we completed the plan, we gave it to an external group and said, can you just run an SDG compliance test? And we had provided for, in several provisions, in several of the goals and targets, the 17 SDG goals. So as we implement our plans, we're also implementing and working towards achieving the SDGs. The SDGs has given us an added opportunity that the MDGs did not have, of being able to use a whole government approach, being able to have the plan owned by the citizens themselves. We've been able to put in place not just a process that is continuously linked with the subnationals, the states. We also have a private sector advisory group. We have a civil society group. And then we have several teams of youths that are interested in and actively working in the SDGs. Now, every year within the NYSC, there are pockets of groups of youths, of corpus that are working on this. So there's ownership, there's national ownership. It's not the federal government program, it's not the state program. Even in the design of some of the programs we're implementing, we have some programs where there's counterpart funding contribution on a 50-50 basis for education, for health, between the state and the federal government. So we're seeing progress being made, and we're hopeful that we will largely be able to achieve the SDGs. We're starting a new process for a new national development plan. We also are developing the various thematic areas, and we keep asking ourselves, are we meeting all of the SDG goals in several of the thematic areas?
Well, by the UN Deputy Secretary General said, key to these is inequality, poverty, security. I'm not even talking about education and health. How focused are they?
Well, let me start from peace. Peace is important for the attainment of any national objective, any global objective. And so it's very important that we should attain peace. In the commitments that the president made, he committed to ensuring peace and security of Nigeria, because that's the first thing. Without peace and security, you can't even be able to attain your economic objectives. But having made some progress in that, we're concentrating on growing the economy, but growing the economy in a manner that is inclusive and sustainable. The president a year ago had made a commitment to Nigerians that we're going to lift 100 million Nigerians out of poverty over a period of 10 years. So as ministers, we have clear KPIs. Every ministry has key performance indicators that must attain. And we're being continuously asked, what is your contribution towards lifting Nigerians out of poverty? So from the perspective of Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, I'll just give you an example. We recently had this Finance Bill 2019 that has been enacted into law. And while we were doing the bill, the target for us was to, as much as possible, provide relief for very small businesses so that those businesses can grow, they can employ people, and thereby pulling Nigerians out of poverty. We took the pains of zeroing taxes for them. So if you're a small business that has turnover of 25 million and below, you pay zero taxes. And medium-sized businesses that have turnover of 25 million to 100 million, we reduce the tax, company income tax, from 30% to 20%. Our belief is that that will help Nigerians to, that will encourage entrepreneurship and therefore improve livelihood, improve employment, and in the process we're pulling Nigerians out of poverty.
Prof, pace of progress quite illuminating there. Would you say it is sufficient towards achieving this huge ambition?
My suspicion is that the pace is never enough. But is that the issue? The issue for me really is that these goals are so important for our future. They are so important for building a world in which you do the greatest good to the greatest number. So at each point, your responsibility, your duty is to do as much as you can with the resources available within the context of the challenges we face. And we do face challenges in this country. One is the security challenge, which takes a lot of resources from other work that needs to be done. While trying to confront that challenge and change the situation, you are faced with this limitation of resources. So I would not say that the pace is as high as I would want it to be, but then I'm too much of a realist to disregard the facts on the table and think you can move on at a fast pace, whatever conditions you find yourselves in.
Okay. Now, the SDGs is launched, in progress, and 10 years is a countdown already.
Yes.
So we ask, did the UN just throw it out there and walked away, left the countries, left the regions to just walk with it? What's the UN doing to assist achieving this ambition nationally, regionally?
Well, no, of course not. It took 4 years to frame them, and I think it was the greatest engagement that we had. Over 5 years, what we can see is there has been engagement. Every country is using the framework one way or another. With the UN, what we did in the last 4 years was, in fact, to look at how we can be more fit for purpose to support and accompany countries to do this, because it is more complex. It is a different paradigm shift for development, where, as we say, we're doing the whole of it. We will look at the economy and to see what are you needing to do to drive it, to make it more inclusive. And so that's something that we do with our country teams, with resident coordinators today who are more independent and able to handle the assets and the footprint of the UN to support partnerships, to support governments in health and education, humanitarian, but even peacekeeping. And we know that this region faces additional challenges. And as the Honourable Minister has said, without peace, we can't have development, or can we then achieve the human rights that we, each and every one of us aspires to and has a right to. And so that's part of it. We use the international fora to convene to see what we can do to try to keep the peace, to try to solve the conflicts. And I have to say that perhaps is when we talk to the scale and the speed at which we need to do these things is not commensurate with the demands and the response that's needed by citizens in countries across this region and around the world. So if we talk about Boko Haram and the terrorism in the Sahel, for instance, this is a huge burden on this country. It's not just about what happens within our borders, it's also what happens across our borders. That's removed from the possibilities of what you can spend in your domestic resources on development. So for us, it's about going back again to the Security Council, to the international community, to impress upon them, resolve issues in Libya, resolve some of the issues that we know come from different parts of the world to exacerbate our situation. The other is to put pressure on climate change. Where are the actors that need to take actions to reduce the emissions, so that we also have a chance to develop at the pace at which we need to, realizing that the greatest burden of climate change is on states like Nigeria. So it's accompanying really states to try to achieve the SDGs.
Okay. One of the questions we asked at the opening of the program, we said, what lessons to learn from Nigeria? We have reports dotting the landscape of Nigeria. Our first shot is Lagos. Let's take a listen.
Alimosho General Hospital Igandu, Lagos State, is one of the SDG intervention projects. The Maternal and Child Care Center is a 140-bed health facility inaugurated in October 2019. With state-of-the-art facilities to boost health care delivery, this project has brought succor to the people of Igandu and Ikontu, as well as other neighboring communities. Lydia Uluwaseun Atishu says the new facility has reduced congestion and created a conducive environment for patients and medical practitioners.
When it comes to this side where we have the children, there's more attention.
When you take care of the mother and the child, you are obviously taking care of the family. And the family unit is very relevant to any society.
The Lagos State government has also stepped up its efforts to improve healthcare delivery across the state through a remarkable improvement in the allocation of funds to the health sector.
In our prevention strategy, we're building a more robust health infrastructure, primary health care, so that we can achieve the universal health coverage.
In the area of education, the Eco Excel initiative has now empowered all public primary school teachers with modern tools to deliver qualitative education.
The new method is a computerized method. So in the first instance, it makes all teachers, including the head teachers, computer literate.
The recent launch of the E for She campaign to promote gender parity, the empowerment of women and youths through various programs are indications of the state government's efforts towards achieving some of the sustainable development goals. However, for these development experts, they are of the view that the desired results cannot be achieved without the involvement of relevant stakeholders.
In the next 10 years is like yesterday. We need to run. We don't have time. And the more we put more effort, the more we achieve.
The development experts also advocate the need for substantial effort on the part of the government and other stakeholders towards the attainment of other aspects of the Sustainable Development Goals. In Lagos, Paul Mukago.
In sustaining the conversation, our next stop is Kaduna.
Provision of quality education is the goal number 4 of Sustainable Development Goals, and Kaduna State has gone far in achieving it. The El Rufai administration is committed toward improving the education sector, which led to the increase in school enrollment by 90.9% in 2 years. The enrollment has increased from 1.1 million to 2.1 million between 2017 and 2019. The state government has also spent huge resources in training teachers and providing infrastructure in schools.
It is our intention in Kaduna State government to ensure that all our public schools offer quality education, and we are encouraging all our senior public servants to have their children in public schools.
Under our Conditional Grant Scheme 2019 project, we are doing our interventions in 2 sectors, the education sector and the health sector. We have awarded contracts about 191 projects in all the 23 local government areas.
As part of efforts to promote quality healthcare delivery, the state government has renovated 255 primary healthcare centers, while Contributory Health Management Authority has been established to ensure universal health coverage. On infrastructure, many roads are under construction in Kaduna metropolis and beyond, in addition to housing development.
If you don't have infrastructure, you don't think of delivering quality education, you do not think of delivering quality healthcare, agriculture, no better life and welfare for the people. Even the investment in businesses and commerce and manufacturing industry cannot take place.
To put the state on sustainable economic growth, the state government created windows for job creation through private sector investment, with more industries springing up across the state. Completion of the new Zaria water treatment plant, stakeholders say, is an indication of the state government commitment toward providing water and sanitation across the state. With this development, the projection is that Kaduna State will be a role model in achieving sustainable development goals, not only in northern Nigeria, but in the entire country. In Kaduna, Ahmad Umar Kudang.
From southeast Nigeria, let's take a listen from this report from Enugu.
Of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, Enugu State has beamed its searchlight on poverty alleviation, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, to mention a few. The projects embarked upon as a core mandate of the Office of the Enugu State Commissioner for Special Duties and Focal Person SDGs are as itemized by the Commissioner Mabel Abo.
The latest was done the year 2017, and it was based on construction of teachers' quarters and water system toilets for various schools. On Go One, we have done a skill acquisition and poverty by involving unemployed youths into skill acquisition and empowering them at the end of their training.
Respondents, however, highlighted other areas of life in the state that require urgent attention if the Sustainable Development Goals must be realized in the year 2030.
I want the government to improve on our electricity and infrastructure-wise, and help the small-scale business, because this electricity is affecting the small-scale business.
The Sustainable Development Goals, a blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all, is yet to be deeply rooted in Enugu State. Respondents, however, advocate synergy between government, private sector, and civil society organizations in order to achieve global, regional, national, and local results. In Enugu, Mena Adobe Kobasi.
Decade of action to deliver on global goals. And if you can be part of the conversation, our phone lines are open. You can put your calls through. Our Twitter handle at Tuesday Live NTA. You can send in your tweets. Now, the Honourable Minister said this thing is not all about government. It's about a collegiate of public-private sector. And when you hear these various tones of music displayed, so looking at the fact that the decade of action will require mobilizing everyone everywhere, demand urgency and ambition at the state level, how is everybody carried? So that, because if everybody is involved and understand, carrying and understanding, then implementation will be seamless. Where are we with this?
We can look at implementation from two perspectives. First, from a cooperation standpoint, that is a relationship between the federal government and the state governments, and then between the state governments and the various actors within the state borders. In terms of the relationship between the federal and state governments, the NGF has enjoyed very robust working relationships. In the areas of education, for instance, we have worked very closely with the federal government. We want to thank the President Buhari, who insisted that the last tranche of the Paris Club refunds should be spent as counterpart funds to those states that hadn't contributed their counterpart funds for basic education. That puts quite a lot of resources in the hands of many states to roll out the reforms which they needed to in the area of basic education. In the area of healthcare, there's also very robust cooperation with the Federal Ministry of Health and other federal agencies. Most states have signed up to the primary healthcare, universal primary healthcare schemes. They're, working on the health insurance arrangements so that more people can have access to basic healthcare. Within the states themselves, like I said, different states have taken ownership of their development agenda and have incorporated the SDGs as part of their planning processes. If I speak of Edo State and a few other states, for to be specific, we find out that we have like a 6-pillar agenda where we focus on social development, institutional arrangements, because governments have to work. The institutions have to be there for us to implement these SDGs. Before you now look at the other, key issues of the environment. It's one area a lot of us have not emphasized, and people forget that part of the security challenges we're having today, particularly in the Northeast, is as a result of climate change. So internally, as part of the planning process, many states are looking at, the issues first at a federal-state collaboration phase, and then, internally within the states and local governments, trying to make sure that the resources at the local government level are also directed to, and focused on dealing with some of the challenges which SDGs are supposed to, to focus on.
Okay, our first caller tonight on the program is calling from Kano, Abubakar Ibrahim. Hello, Abubakar. Hello. Hello, Abubakar. You're on to Tuesday Live today.
Hello. Good afternoon, sir.
Good evening.
Hello. My name is Abubakar Ibrahim. I'm calling from Kano State.
Go ahead.
I would like to know if we have any impact or we have seen any impact. Good afternoon.
Just go ahead. We can hear you.
Good afternoon. My name is Abubakar Ibrahim. I would like to ask if we have any impact of SDGs or if we have seen of SDGs in Kano State.
Okay, thank you.
We are. My name is Abubakar Ibrahim. I would like to ask if we have any.
Thank you, Obaka. I think he has just thrown one question. I think you want to respond to that.
If I heard him clearly, he was asking if
there's
there's
any
any impact of the SDGs in Kano State.
Yes.
Well, let me speak from the point of view of the federal government. The federal government has started implementing the National Social Investment Program since 2016, and Kano State has one of the largest number of beneficiaries. Kano State has all of the clusters, so the homegrown school feeding program is there, the Empower program is there. In fact, I think the largest number of students that are being fed under the homegrown school feeding program is from Kano State. We have the Empower beneficiaries in Kano. We also have a significant number of persons that are receiving this monthly conditional cash transfer of 5,000 naira, and also a good number of beneficiaries under the Government Enterprise Empowerment Program, the JEEP, as well as the trader money. So because of the sheer size of the population in Kano, it has the largest share of beneficiaries in the National Social Investment Program. And the Social Investment Program is addressing several of the SDG goals. So you can say that by implication that the SDGs is well on its way to being implemented, at least the contribution of the federal government. But I've also been to Kano and I've seen the kind of very good infrastructure that has been rolled out by the state government, very good roads, bridges. But I also had an opportunity of going for the commissioning of two major hospitals. One is a pediatric center and another one that was called President Muhammad Buhari Hospital, like a general hospital. Very well equipped modern hospital. The school also has done renovation of a lot of schools and has made a significant regulation that I think is new. I think there's Kano, Kaduna, and Edo that have done the states to domesticate the health insurance program. So that is all addressing several of the goals of the SDGs in Kano.
Okay. Well, still on you, Honorable Minister, very critical to this is given the fact that one of the concerns that we saw with MDGs was the issue of set targets. Now, for SDGs, we have set targets. So what M&E do you have in place to ensure that timelines are met towards attaining these set targets?
So learning from the MDGs, the very first point of call for us was developing a baseline, and that was done by the National Bureau of Statistics and the SDG office. So because we have baselines, we are now able to monitor what has been achieved on an annual basis. And the reports are showing that there's progress being made. The movement is a positive one. I think also in 2020 there's another report that is going to be made, and then it will be like we didn't start 10 years ago, so it will be like a midterm report of the SDGs that we'll be doing in 2020.
You know, one thing about certain targets, if you don't apply some mild sanctions or incentives, people will not jack up. Do you have plans to maybe apply incentives to make it somehow competitive?
Well, so earlier on I gave you an example of the counterpart funding scheme. That's an incentive, and it's saying federal government has resources on the table, but the states have to match those funds. So it's being done for quite a number of projects that are implemented by the SDG office, but also in the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund. We made sure that the provision has an incentive for the states to also provide some contribution before they can access the funding that is available.
Let's take this caller from Port Harcourt, Mustafa. Hello, Mustafa.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, Mustafa. Go ahead, please. You're onto the program.
Hello?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Yes, I call in respect of the Empower program that the Honorable Minister just said now. Hello?
We can hear you. Go ahead, Mustafa.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Hello.
We can hear you. We can hear you. Go ahead. It looks we have lost that caller there. Well, let me go to Professor Jibril before I take the tweets. Now, key to SDGs, one regular song in the mouth of Nigeria at the federal, state, local government has been the issue of climate change. And key to this is recharging the Lake Chad basin. And if this is done, economic activities, migrational issues will be addressed. What's your take on this?
Well, the Lake Chad crisis is a serious one. As we know, 40 million people are dependent on Lake Chad for their livelihoods. So this is something that you cannot abandon. It's not an accident that the insurgency we have been suffering for the past decade arose in that zone. I recall in our younger days there were huge agricultural projects for wheat and rice production in the Lake Chad region, but the drying up of the lake has caused a major difficulty in terms of people's livelihoods. The recharging of the lake is a big issue. I know that the plan has been to take water from the Ubangi River in Central African Republic and channel it to Lake Chad. The Central African Republic is in serious security crisis and has been, and the state in that country controls only 30% of its territory. So it's a project that's important, but may not be very immediate. There are also competition. South Africa wants Ubangi River to be dammed to produce electricity. My sense about the Lake Chad recharging issue is what can we do ourselves to improve the situation. We know, for example, that my state, Kano State, has dammed the Chalawa River that takes water to Lake Chad. What can we do to ensure that some of that water is released? And how do we improve interstate relations so that you don't have one state taking decisions that can adversely affect other states without making sure everybody is carried along? The issue, therefore, of Lake Chad is that the two sources from Nigeria, we have to really work on it. The other is in your country through Gombe, which is also dammed. But I think there are also micro issues that need to be addressed. There's a lot of local variation. There are still parts of Lake Chad that are viable. How do you ensure you bring security as quickly as possible so that fishing can continue where there is water and farming can continue around the existing water sources? There's therefore a lot in terms of micro-planning at the state and local government that could lead to a significant improvement of the lives of the 40 million people that live around there.
Okay, let's take this caller from Warri, Gabriel. Hello, Gabriel. Hello, Gabriel. It looks Gabriel is not ready. Well,
hello. Yeah, I can't hear you very well, but I hope you can hear me.
We can hear you. Go ahead.
My question is this.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
My question is this. A lot has been said about entrepreneurship for unemployed youths, but there are also graduates who have left school for quite a number of years now, who might not be actually having the ability to go into business. Not everybody's cut out of business. So what is the SDG's role in making sure some of these students or researchers, as it were, some of them, can, make use of their research to properly develop or make a meaningful contribution to the Nigerian society. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me leave that. It's an open question.
Yeah, it is an open question. I just wanted to add to the question you also put for Professor Jibril. The Lake Chad piece, there's also a lot of water bodies that need better maintenance. If you go to Yobe State, you'll find many of them that are overtaken with taifa grass. When we were in environment, we were able to remove that, and those water bodies actually released a phenomenal amount of water for farming to then, augment what has been lost in terms of fishing. On the question of young people in employment, many young people with not necessarily the skills that will engage with the market, and I think that's a really big challenge to the country. And here the UN has got together with a program that looks at what they call Generation Unlimited, putting skill sets that will be necessary for markets that are growing, investments that are being made, and a real focus on entrepreneurial skills, ones that allow people to take opportunities in the environment, not just waiting for a job, but creating jobs, becoming masters of their own aspirations. And I think that's really the way to go here, for looking to government to provide the enabling environment, the infrastructure, the power that we see, that's necessary, but investing in young people so that they can take charge of their own lives as well. That's important. I think the social investment program has done quite a bit to try to look at that. But perhaps going back to what His Excellency had said, it really is also in the states that we are going to be looking to empower young people. And local governments. Let's not leave the local governments behind, because this is where really young people are. You talk about the Northeast. If we speak to climate change, these are, even the conflict, these are all exacerbated by climate change. But the root causes have been an inability for justice and inclusion and equality to thrive, for people to get basic services from local governments, from states, and therefore hopeless and become easy fodder for those who want to engage in destabilizing regions like the Northeast. So it is important in everything that we do to see how do we bring back our youth into the mainstream of our economic growth.
Okay, before I take now the next set of questions, let me ask Excellency, do you have a case study in your state linked with the question that was just asked?
Oh, certainly. We have what we call Edo Jobs, which is we started as a portal where we encourage young people, well, young and not young people, to register, and got people. We have about 200,000 people who have registered on that portal, which therefore means that as a government we have visibility on 200,000 people who we know are actively searching for jobs. And so what we've done in the case of Edo Jobs is to undertake several initiatives. One involves job matching, like like Amina said, you want to first identify the jobs people are suited for, and you want to train and prepare them for those jobs. We also, want to also emphasize entrepreneurship, to training them and relating them to various opportunities. What we've done is to look at areas that the jobs are being created. Areas like technology, areas like agriculture, and try to steer a lot of these young, people in that direction, to take an interest. And we've made sure that we've continued to emphasize on training. We have 3 specific initiatives. We have the Innovation Hub, which was launched by the Vice President, which houses a lot of technology companies where young people just train on a daily basis to look for opportunities. We have companies like Facebook, Google, Cisco, all sitting in that location, offering training, offering support to young people, young business people who are in search of, who have ideas and they want to express. We also have what we call a production hub, where we've looked for locations, ensure we put in facilities, amenities like 24/7 electricity, water, security, and encourage young entrepreneurs to go and locate there and produce. We have 2 of them, running, and it's been very, very successful. In fact, after we launched the first hub, we had almost 200 small businesses on a waiting list, seeking for such opportunities.
Okay, governance is key to all this. If all these programs are put in place and the governance process is not properly mainstreamed, what happens?
Well, you cannot perform if you do not govern correctly, if you are not able to develop policies that achieve the objectives you've set for yourself, and if you are not able to ensure that resources are generated and affected to specific projects and activities that will deliver the results you are seeking. So for me, governance is extremely important. And we've had a long history in this country of serious challenges to governance. One of the most serious has been, of course, the issue of public corruption. We do have a government that's committed to combating corruption. But as Nu Ribado used to say, when you fight corruption, corruption fights you back. So I think this government realizes it's not as easy as they thought initially. But what's important is that significant efforts are being carried out in that direction. Because once you are able to ensure public resources are used for the public good, you are, by definition, improving your governance capacity. And that's why that's particularly important. The other issue is really the question of competence. Our educational institutions have been declining over time. I've been a teacher for 40 years, so I know that. And the skill sets that we are delivering in our schools are not the best to generate the levels of productivity that we need to have in our society. So how can we use improved governance to make sure the training our children receive in our schools are improved significantly, so that that improved training and skills would contribute positively to achieving these goals we have set for ourselves?
Okay, well, let's take this caller from Kano, Tasio. Hello, Tasio. Hello, Tasio. Go ahead, Tasio. Well, we have a
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, Tasio. Go ahead, please.
Hello, good evening.
I can hear you. Go ahead, go ahead.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
This is Sassu Musa calling from Kano. Please, my question goes to Hajia Amina directly.
Go ahead.
Yes, I want to know if there is any funding directly from the United Nations directly to the various states on supporting these SDGs, or was it purposely designed for the president or the state governors to implement and support this program? Direct. So that's my question.
Thank you, Tasio.
That's a great question. I mean, the international framework provides some form of a frame of these different goals that have to be had, but it's a sovereign, it's a state responsibility. How do you grow your economies? What the UN does is to try to convene to leverage the resources that could come in investments to countries like Nigeria. So yes, there are opportunities. We can look at all the health funds that are available for which Nigeria benefits from to specific states. The Global Fund is one, and it provides for a number of vaccines and programs over the years. It's being scaled up for the SDGs. We also see funding now coming for sustainable energy, and that also is around the sustainable energy for all initiative that we have that also provides resources here. The Green Climate Fund is another opportunity that Nigeria is benefiting from. So yes, there are various resources that the UN has that are accessible to countries like Nigeria.
Okay, before we go on break and take other specific questions. Let's take a couple of tweets that have come in here, and like I told you, as much as time allows, we'll take all. Otherwise, we'll take as little as we can within the time space of the program. First here is Nadom Wuyep. Nigeria is indeed blessed with intellectuals. Howbeit, prompt action is the challenge. God bless Nigeria. Next one says, good evening. I thank honorables in the studio. Very important program going on. Please, Honorable Minister, help us to address the issue of delays in NPower volunteer stipend, which has been a reoccurrence every month. General stipend has not been paid. That's a tweet coming from Good Son of Godfather. That is the name of the Twitter handle. The next one is Farouk. It takes time to plan a successful program. However, there has been series of discontinuity in program implementation by successive administrations. For example, you win and Jeep. Will that not affect the speed in achieving SDGs? Dao Soul says, good evening, please. My question is to the minister. Why is it that NPower stipends don't get paid on time? Today's date is 11, but yet no payment. Thank you. Maybe you respond to that, please.
Okay. I can say that from the point of view of Ministry of Finance, we have released funding for NPower. The ministry that is responsible for paying NPower should be in the process of effecting those payments.
Okay. I believe your Twitter is addressed now. The very last few on this segment is, can one really say that SDGs has achieved its major set objectives, which is eradication of poverty, considering the fact that Nigeria has become the poverty capital of the world, having more than 100 million people living in abject poverty? Key question. Let me take it to the governor.
Yeah, it's work in progress. SDGs is work in progress. What is significant is that, particularly in the second term of Mr. President, we have seen renewed action. We've seen renewed vigor in pursuing those policies that will help grow the economy. You know, particularly in the areas of agriculture. We're seeing more investments going into agriculture. We're seeing more activities in agricultural production. We're seeing increase in food sufficiency. We're seeing more investments going into education, into healthcare. With time, you will begin to see significant improvements in livelihoods. You begin to see significant improvements in education and the quality of education and in healthcare. All of this can't happen overnight because the process that led us to where we are now did not happen overnight. So there is progress being made. Investments are being made. Yes, we still have execution capacity. We could run much faster. But all those bottlenecks have been identified. And with, being in this program is one of them, just talking about the issues.
Okay.
Can I just say something?
Yes.
We took stock of where we were with the SDGs in September last year, and what was clear across the globe, a lot of engagement, a lot of efforts being made, but insufficient for us to attain the SDGs. It's the reason why we have the call for the Decade of Action. So we need to accelerate at a far greater speed and scale if we're to get there. And each year we have to put the pressure on each and every one of these countries that are signed up to ask, so how far have you got? I think that helps countries because they are reminded. But one of the challenges that we will have, and we're not able to answer that or respond to citizens as we should, is baseline data. Disaggregated baseline data that actually tells us where, if we want to leave no one behind, where are the no ones? We've got pretty good data when it comes to the aggregate, but as you start to disaggregate it by gender, by local government, by specific constituency, we start to lose people and not see them. We still don't know. We might know how many millions of children are on the street. I think there are over 600 million children on the street around the world, but where are they? And when you get to a country, which specific localities are they so that you can bring those investments in? So we need to do quite a bit of work to enhance the planning, to help people come in and say, okay, we can help with these specific things. Today, if we continue at the level at which we are, we will miss the goal for the SDGs. So there's urgency and there's a call to action on that decade now.
Just before we go on break, this very last two, it says most of the core members want to contribute their quota, but their major difficulty is how to source funds. It happened to me during my service years here because most communities are not ready to help. Dan Nasarawa, last on this team, says at Amina Mohammed and two others, what control measures is you and the federal government putting in place to sustain the program, and particularly with reference to policy execution at both tiers of government? Maybe you want to respond to that before we go on break?
May I just say, I just wanted to add on the issue of data and monitoring and tracking. What we've started doing is putting in place a data system. The ISDN was launched in September 2000 by the President at the back of ONGA. And also, in addition to the ISDN, we have a Grade 3 project that is actually capturing data at a very, very granular level. So we have now a mapping of all the primary healthcare centers in the country, and you can see it on the map. You can see where you have gaps. We have a mapping of primary schools that has superimposed on top of it population, so you see where you need to build more schools. That is important for being able to report the progress that has been made.
Okay, you can be part of the conversation to our phone call and also our Twitter handle at Tuesday Live NTA, but that will be when we return after this time out. Don't go away.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous. Whether you do it for fun or for political gains, real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
You can follow us on all our social media platforms: Facebook at NTA Network News, Instagram at NTA Network, Twitter at NTA News Now, YouTube at NTA News Online. Or visit www.nta.ng. For live streaming, visit www.nta.ng/live. Now, you can stay updated on the go, be it on your TV, iPhone, laptop, or iPad, or download the NTA mobile application from your Play Store or App Store. NTA, you can beat the rich.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Thanks for staying tuned, and the focus tonight again is decade of action to deliver on global goals. Well, in keeping faith with the conversation, we told you we'll go around the country to bring you reports of testimonies and evidence of how SDGs is doing in Nigeria. We begin this segment with a report from Ibadan.
Sustainable Development Goals are a list of interconnected issues germane to human welfare, designed as blueprint of global actions for overall human development. Experts believe their actualization must not only be methodical, but must be prioritized to fit into the directions and policies of governments.
What are those ones that can really translate to better life even for our people?
And that begins from even goal 1, which talks about no poverty, goal 2, which talks about the issue of no hunger, goal 3, which talks about the issue of health and well-being, or even goal 4 that talks about the issue of quality education, or you talk about goal 5, which talks about the issue of gender, or even talks about goal 6, which has to talk about the issue of water and sanitation. And climate change is still there, which is goal 13 too. So government could prioritize all these I've mentioned because they are very central to the lives of common man.
Realization of the agenda and global statement itemized in the strategic framework for SDGs no doubt required concerted efforts to change the narrative in the area of human welfare. In Nigeria, observers are of the view that despite the available resources, much still needs to be done, especially among the second and third tiers of government, regarded to be closer to the grassroots.
Distancing themselves, deliberately or inadvertently, is going to slow down the achievement of SDGs. For now, I can tell you, there is nothing much the states and local governments are doing.
If a government has devoted as much as 22.3% of the total annual budget of the state to a sector, which is education sector, that is to tell you the level of commitment and passion that the governor of that state has for education.
Increased awareness creation leading to global sensitization on SDGs with a view to allowing citizens to take active part and tap available opportunities is regarded as a move to accelerate actions on this goal. The expectation is that all stakeholders will work together for the actualization of these goals in Nigeria. In Ibadan, Dayo Gunshola.
Our next stop is Sokoto.
Adopted by all United Nations member states in 2015, the Sustainable Development Goals are a call for action by all countries for rich and middle-income earners. This is with the view to promoting prosperity while protecting the environment and ending poverty, which must go hand in hand with strategies that build economic growth. The Sustainable Development Goals are the blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all. In Sokoto State, the Sustainable Development Goals are offshoot of the MDGs with sustenance of the inherited legacies of the MDGs. Among successes recorded are advocacy, training of policy makers, as well as interventions in areas of health and education. For government projections in the state, all government agencies are to streamline their policies, budget and programs in line with the 17 SDG goals.
SDG is now more concerned with streamlining the 17 goals of the MDGs so that various MDAs can key in and project and make plans in respect of achieving these goals simultaneously.
Diversification and digitalizing the economy will address some of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals.
Nigeria cannot boast of a planned IT or ICT framework that suits, the level of advanced countries. We depend on developed countries, developed nations for our technology, transfer of knowledge, and a host of other things. Now, how do you fathom a situation where our education system up till this moment has not been reviewed enough to capture where the world is? I'm not talking about where the world is going to, where the world is today.
If achieved by the year 2030, many among the 17 goals will not only bring about development, but address economic growth globally. In Sokoto, Shehu Muhammad Datti.
From South Nigeria, we go to Benin, Edo State.
The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development adopted by all United Nations member states in 2015 provides a shared blueprint for peace and prosperity for the people now and into the future. To achieve the goals, Edo State government embarked on a growth trajectory anchored on 6 thematic pillars, which include investing in the people through education, building institutions, and launch of an economic revolution based on production.
With his 6 thematic pillars, have been able to make the SDGs simple for us. The 6 thematic pillars, which are the infrastructure development, institutional reforms, economic revolution, social welfare enhancement, environmental sustainability, culture and tourism. Those 6, if you look at them and look at the 70 goals, what we've done is we've streamlined each of them, breaking them into, making it just 6 core for the state. And in that, we have been able to implement the SDGs, and we know that we're going to be able to, before the end of the 10 years, do well in the state.
The initiatives have enabled the state to easily link its developmental plans to the 17 SDGs and its targets, thereby making the SDGs serve as a roadmap for achieving sustainable and inclusive growth for the states.
The contribution of the local government is enormous. There are so many. First, we ensure that at a particular time every year, like the period we are now, councils ensure that farm roads are graded so that whatever is in the farm can be evacuated to the city for the market so that farmers can make more money.
The State SDG Office, on its part, is strengthening capacity to build statistics for data monitoring and benchmarking of projects in order to meet up with the resolutions of the United Nations for the following up and reporting on the SDGs. Progress made so far in the achievement of some of the set goals and their target shows that though there is still much to be done, Edo State has continued to show commitment to implementing the SDG agenda. In Benin, good luck in Aini.
Thanks too much for staying tuned. Those were reports coming in from Ibadan, Sokoto, and Benin. Before I take the next line of tweets, let me take on the UN Deputy Secretary General. 2 prompt questions now. One, your passion. I know outside the environment you do a lot on gender and inequality. What will you speak to gender and also touch on the position of the Sahel on this?
Well, yes, it is a very big passion. I mean, we always say if goal 5 is...
When can we attain that?
Well, you know, we hope we attain it by 2050, but it is an integral part of every goal. It's not a standalone, you know, goal 5 on gender equality. It's a big part of what we do when we say, you know, we want to look at energy efficiency or inequalities, jobs, health. Gender is a big part of that. This year we will celebrate Beijing Plus 25, and the discussion that has gone on there, voices of the people, how far have we succeeded, what is left, as we say, the glass is half full. So there are 6 areas where, you know, we want to focus on going forward in the next 10 years. And it is about women's empowerment and leadership. It will be about technology. It will be about sexual reproduction and health. It'll also be about climate. And I think here, and inequalities. So it's yet to be achieved. I think it's helpful that, for instance, in the UN, in the reform, we've focused on gender parity so that we can begin to change the power dynamics even within decision-making and the space, the workspace. Perhaps that's helpful if everyone thinks about it in your cabinet, in your ministry, really how we begin to do that. And then I think you have a better chance of applying some of the issues with a gender lens. You've seen the program from the UN on the he for she. That's really trying to bring men into decision making that includes women, and to let them see the benefits, the co-benefits of that, ensuring that women have their rightful place in it. So I mean, sooner rather than later, of course, and it's gradual. We haven't done enough. We still need to do more. But I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful because I see young people understanding this better, inequalities, partnerships, that it is about men and women, and that women's rights are human rights.
Okay, Sahel.
On the Sahel, much more complex. I mean, we do have a Sahel strategy, which the whole of the UN and partners from different donors, including the bank and other major players, have taken part. But again, it's about cross-border activity, it's about coordination of different sectors, it's about bringing resources in, but it's also about the conflicts. And those conflicts are beyond any one state. So the international community here has to try to deal with the Libya crisis. They have to abide by those resolutions that try to bring peace to Libya, which in the very beginning was very much a situation that could have been avoided, but it's been exacerbated because there were no real plans the day after. And we're suffering for that all the way through the Sahel, particularly in this country. And I think the plans to try to resolve that in the UN, the Secretary General has tried to impress upon the Security Council the need to support the G5 Sahel and the forces to combat terrorism, because there's no peace to keep. And so we have to try to do that. Unfortunately, we don't have a Security Council that has agreed that yet. Hopefully in the recent meetings at the AU, where the Secretary General was present and there were discussions on the Sahel, that we begin to see how to support ECOWAS and their contribution to trying to ensure that it's resolved. But it's ongoing, and it's a major stress for the region.
Okay, we'll talk about inclusiveness here, and you ask, where's the place of the elderly in SDGs? Happily, in Nigeria, we have this act signed by Mr. President for senior citizens. What should be done for senior citizens within the ambit of the SDGs?
Well, the real challenge for senior citizens is that for those who have been part of the formal workforce, we have a pension system that doesn't really work. It's simply not enough to sustain them. So you have had people who've gone through a working life that's quite comfortable, and at the time they should be resting, run into trouble of significant shortfalls in their incomes. I think that's one key issue. But the issue of senior citizens is also linked to the other key social issues. For example, health problems tend to worsen as you age, and therefore you have additional requirements, but also additional costs, because we know the nature of our health system, where you are largely dependent on, or rather forced to pay for a lot of your medication. And including them, therefore, would mean developing specific strategies that will target these problems. I think the president in particular has been very concerned about ensuring all pensioners have full access, or rather improved conditions, and very many of them have had their challenges addressed. But that's also taking only one set of elderly people, that's those who've gone through formal employment. But the reality in our system is that there's a huge new bunch of people, different bunch of people that haven't gone through, that have been farmers, that have been in the informal sectors. And as they age, they encounter a specific problem in the rural areas, where many of the young people leave the villages and go to towns, abandoning the elderly, who have great difficulties surviving under those conditions without their children. And I think, I'm sure the minister would be including in her budgets considerations on how to address those specific groups that are under specific crisis in their personal levels, in their livelihoods, in their ability to survive.
Okay, now let me take a couple of tweets, and I think one or two are begging for response from the minister and the governor with us here. Quickly, coming from beautiful Dr. Ipalik Buhari, he says, how can we honestly achieve our SDG goals when we don't even know our precise population figures? Our last census was more than 13 years ago. The next one from Media Enterprises, it says, we appreciate the SDG framework in sustainable development. My question is, how do community youths, rural areas, benefit in the SDGs, especially in the area of Goal 8, skills and decent work? Same from Media Enterprises. What is the UN SDGs doing in taking this advocacy to the grassroots community for them to be able to understand and know that government is actually planning something good for them and how they can key into the process is there funds for the rural community development group? Is there funds for rural community development groups? Michael Seidu says, please, I want to know who is responsible for the design, locations of some of these SDG projects in the states. Because in most states, the minorities or the opposition are in the disadvantage. The last on this segment is coming from Derek Jinga 01. My question is simple. What modalities has the federal government put in place to upgrade the first batch of NPAR? They have admitted knowing this is an SDG goal which takes care of graduates at the moment. SDGs has 17 goals, but NPAR volunteers want permanent jobs. Let me start with you.
A lot for her.
So a lot of questions on NPower today. So let me start again from NPower.
Okay.
The concept of NPower was we were to employ 500,000 youths. They were to work for 2 years, and they were to be supported to move on to some other things, maybe some other jobs, or we had hoped entrepreneurship, so that we take another batch. So we have the first set still on, and NPower is getting to the 4th year now. And there are others that have been on the waiting list, waiting for their own turn. So what we have to do now is to see how to exit the batch that is currently on in a manner that enables them move on to something else. We hope that they will not come out and just be in the job market, that we are going to provide them with resources through the JEEP program. That's what we're discussing now, through the JEEP program. So they have small loans that they can actually use to better themselves. During the course of their training, the very first batch of that 500 that had devices that were given to them, like iPads like this, and on that devices there were several skills depending on what their preference was. That was a software that was uploaded so that they were learning and training even as they are doing the assignments that was given to them. They were trained either as teachers or agricultural extension workers or health extension workers. So after working for 4 years, they should be able to come out of that and do something for themselves. So we have a chance to take another fresh batch. On census, the National Population Commission is preparing what they need to do in terms of a roadmap to present to Mr. President for approval to kick up a census. And we had a meeting just yesterday, and one of the commissioners was there. So they're looking at 2022 as the kickoff for the census. But they already are working on a lot of preparatory processes. They're doing what is called delineation. That's the right word. Delineation right now. And they've done about 50% of the local government so far. On skills for decent work. The skills and decent work. I think it's important that as the team that are working at the Ministry of Education, what they're doing is trying to incorporate more skills development in our educational system, so that every youth that comes out of school doesn't come out with just an academic degree, but they are also skilled, that they could choose to pursue that skilled work rather than going and going to look for a white collar job. A lot of countries, even our neighbors, are doing that, have been doing that for a long time. We need to return the technical colleges, put them to full work, and we need to make sure that every child that graduates from a school is graduating with some skill set.
Let me allow the governor to respond to one or two. I think the particular one that refers to opposition and minorities.
Yes, yes. You hear such rhetorics when there's scarcity, when it's not enough to go around. Then people question the basis on which things were distributed and why they did not get. But what I think for the SDGs, like I said in the beginning, we have to incorporate them as part of our development agenda. And what some states have done, particularly my state, Edo State, is to try and granularize those SDG goals, take them down to the local levels. One of the handicaps, one of the drawbacks we've seen is a misalignment. We don't have that perfect alignment on these goals from the global, regional, federal, and the subnational. What we've done is to approach, yes, we understand we have local governments, but we've gone beyond that. We've gone to the wards. Each ward in Edo State, for instance, has what we call a ward development committee, made up of people who live in those communities, who have volunteered to participate in the governance of those communities. And it's at that level certain key decisions are made, as to where should we site a primary healthcare center? What should be the priority this year? Should it be water or should it be street lighting? When funds come in, because you have all sorts of interventions that come into communities, most of the time they're not aligned. But when you have people at the local level sit down to now help to determine their own priorities, what is most pressing, then that sort of feedback should be looped back into that your SDG planning process, so that you just don't dish out what you feel the people what has been put on paper. You get to appreciate what people in those communities want and have a fair process, a transparent process for ensuring that as you provide these amenities or these facilities, there is a transparent process for allocating them, so that these arguments about these facilities or benefits going to opposition or not going to opposition or minorities will be drastically reduced. So it's about, here again, how you execute, the capacity to having strong institutions to make sure things happen the way you want them to, and have an M&E process to evaluate that they actually did happen the way you said them.
So there's nothing about opposition or minorities?
Well, you see, for most of us, you are governor of everybody. Because when you go back the next time to the polls to ask for votes, you're going to be asking for votes from everybody. So it's very short-sighted thinking to just think about only your people. Okay. As a governor of a state, everybody is your person.
Okay, it's time to go to the streets to feel the pulse of Nigerians. But quickly, there's this tweet directed at Amina Mohammed. Let me take it before we go to the streets. It came from quite a tongue twister name here, Arkasieme. I can't take that, all the name. Good evening, the host and guest in the studio. My special greetings to Amina Mohammed, who is said to be my mentor.
Very good.
My question goes to her as well. My question is, who has the responsibility of recruiting SDG workers? I meant, is it the UN government, federal government, or state government?
All of the above. Let's say a nation in itself is providing opportunities for jobs or entrepreneurship. There is a responsibility there to create the enabling environment. But also that the UN tries to bring in the investments that are needed to make that enabling environment more open and responsive to decent jobs. So it's a collective responsibility, and each one has it more easily defined depending on where you are at the federal, at the local level, or even internationally.
And when NTA ran the promo indicating that you feature this program, questions came to some of us asking, do you have a portal where you discuss gender issues officially?
Yes, I do. I have a blog.
Can they share with you?
They can, absolutely. We will share. We have a blog that I have, and what I do is to promote people who are working and in the UN, our leaders, on gender, and then this particular year is going to be a very big focus, month by month, on different aspects of gender empowerment.
Well, the program Tuesday Live tonight is taking a look at Decade of Action to deliver on global goals. Well, as participating as the program is, we always go to the streets to feel the pulse of the Nigerians there, besides dotting the landscape of Nigeria. Let's take a listen to them, what they have to say about this issue.
The present government is doing a real good work in the SDG development, goal, in the SDG development goal. So, like, border closing for the, how do I say, agricultural development due to food distance is good. That will help make Nigerians in particular.
This regime, they are trying because many people benefit from this in power. Like those graduates that has not gotten the job, they really help them in aspect of that in power. Most of them, they are now in their own, instead of them to depend on the government, because most of them now, they are thanking Buhari.
It helped. You know, their program is fine. It is, in fact, it's very, very okay. You know, closing of the border, it helps the farmers. So if you go to the villages where you know, not even in the town here to interview, you can go to the village and interview farmers. You see, they will tell you that they like this present government because we are in the city now. It's for us to get to the market and buy something, and then you start your normal daily things, you know. But the farmers valued it. So if you are saying today that let the president leave, the people in the state and the local level will fight you.
We know that this president came with good plans, only that Nigeria, there is one thing that is missing. We are good in planning, implementation is the problem. Though we have begun to realize the achievement of SDG, unfortunately, lack of discipline made the implementation not okay. In what sense? Most of the works and jobs that are awarded or programs that are brought up, they are not monitored as they are supposed to.
Those were Nigerians reacting on the issues based on the discussion. Let me go to Professor Jubril. How will civil society ensure governance and inclusion in processes? What hope?
Well, the perspective of civil society is that these goals are for the people. Mm-hmm. Therefore, if the people are not part of the process, then you are going to fail. What are the specific demands people have on their governments? Like His Excellency was saying, they have a system in his state where they generate ideas from communities, from the people. What we try to do in civil society is to ensure people are empowered at the grassroots to make specific demands, and then what we seek to do is to find ways of channeling those demands from citizens to governments, so that those demands are now processed into policies that are developed. Much more important, that budgetary allocation considers these specific demands. You know, the whole issue really about these goals is that it's a consensus that there are certain things that need to happen if we are going to have a peaceful and prosperous world. There are serious challenges to peace and to prosperity, and you must have a perspective where you know will lead you progressively to that position of peace and prosperity. Now, if you don't integrate into the equation demands emanating from citizens, it means you will not be doing things that concerns their lives and livelihoods, and therefore discontent is going to be the outcome from the popular side of the equation, as it was. To prevent that discontent, but above all, to ensure you are moving in the right direction of progress, the voice of citizens is extremely important.
Okay, let's take this caller from Gombe. Jennifer. Hello, Jennifer. Hello, Jennifer.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Can you speak up, please? We can hear you.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Go ahead.
Good evening to the presenter, the minister. All right, I said good evening.
Thank you. We can hear
the
you.
presenter, you,
Go ahead.
and the minister, and the professor, and my mother, Moni Amina.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Honestly, I appreciate you people for what you've been doing on SDG. All right, my question goes like this. As a mother and gender equality, I've been longing to work with SDG. If she can connect me to work with one of the United Nations networking, for me to show how skillful I am, though I'm calling from the rural area of Gombe State. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Jennifer. Well, quite ambitious there.
From her state. It's from her state. It's from your state.
It's from my state, and then of course we really want to see women take center stage. The governor there right now is making really big efforts to try to include women, and that's been a challenge in my state that has been quite conservative. So to have Jennifer, I think your ambitions, I hope they're realized. Joining the UN is many different ways that you can do that, and so it would be worthwhile you making sure you contact the offices in Abuja, because we have a huge country team that is positioned in different parts of the country. So I'm not sure that we have an office in Gombe right now, but I know that they're looking at it. I know that we have in Bauchi, we have in Maiduguri. So yes, apply. I will look out for you, Jennifer.
Honorable Minister, like you want to say something?
No, I was just saying that it's important that the DSG is from Gombe, and I hope the DSG will work at least in the state, so that the state will be one of the examples about gender inclusion, about participation, more participation of women within the government and within the space in general. Some other states have done well enough. I think Kwara, Kwara State has about 50-50 now in their cabinet, so that is good. But more needs to be done.
Absolutely.
In the parliament, the performance actually nosedived, moving gender representation from 7% in the 8th Senate to now we have just 4% in the. So something really drastic and special needs to be done to have more women in elective offices, even if not in appointed offices.
To Governor Basaki,
Yes.
Jennifer spoke from the rural hub in Nigeria.
Right.
And you, as a governor, and speaking for the Nigerian Governors Forum.
Right.
And you have the 30 of government right there with you.
Right.
What can you contribute to this?
I'll say for us at the Nigerian Governors Forum, we continue to...
But so let me take this call from Ali.
Yes.
Ali is calling in from Kano before you complete, please.
Okay.
Hello, Ali. Hello, go ahead, we can hear you. Well, it seems that call is not true. Please complete.
Thank you. I think we continue to engage, like I said, first with the federal government. For the SDGs, it's a global framework, which has been designed, for the world, as it were, and everyone needs to adapt that framework to suit their own peculiar and unique circumstance. So for us at the Governors Forum, what we do on a monthly basis is to have what we call trackers. There are certain items, certain issues we're looking at, and we'll look at those goals that have the multiplier and much more far-reaching effects. Those that will affect livelihoods, those that will, affect health, the key indicators that will pull people out of poverty. And so as a forum, we we work with federal agencies. We have very good relationship with the Honorable Minister of Finance, while she was in planning, and also now the Federal Ministry of Finance, to continually engage, federal agencies, so that we can align federal efforts with what's going on in the states. And one area where we've made significant, remarkable strides has been in the area of polio eradication, for instance. We've not had any incident of polio for the last 3 years because working with the federal agencies, we've taken immunization to the grassroots. And, you see on immunization days, governors now leave their offices to make sure that, immunizations are carried out even in rural areas. Health is one area where we've seen quite a lot of collaboration and some results as a result of such collaboration. There are also initiatives in the area of agriculture. So working with the Central Bank of Nigeria, on all the windows they've opened. Many states, you've heard of the Kebbi miracle in the area of rice. We're now working with the Central Bank in poultry. There are very many states, particularly in the north and south, that are, looking at food sufficiency. The Central Bank, working with some string of northern states, have done very well in the area of cotton production. And for us, in the southern parts of Nigeria, we have the oil palm initiative, which, when fully executed, we want to put about 1 million hectares of land under cultivation. You can imagine how far-reaching this will be. This was the source of a miracle of Malaysia, which, working with the federal government through the Central Bank, we've just commenced.
Okay. Well, in 2017, talking with the United Nations Deputy Secretary General, you were very emphatic. Besides governance, you said SDGs matter for business. Why would you say so?
Well, if you want to grow your economy, you're going to have the private sector there investing. And I think one of the partners that we had that was not there in the MDGs time was the private sector, to see how they could make sure that their businesses were sustainable, that they were employing people, decent jobs, that they were bringing what was possible in terms of investments into our countries, into our partnerships, and so therefore a very big responsibility. Government alone is not going to be able to fill the gap that is required to achieve the SDGs, and so part of those that will help us to do that will be the private sector, and so that needs to be encouraged, incentivized. I think certainly when I look at the Doing Business World Bank report, we see that Nigeria improves and has improved in that. And that's because, again, private sector matters. The UN has a global compact. It's a network across all our countries of businesses. And they're becoming more sustainable, more climate, I would say, sensitive. So the actions that we need to take are more sustainable as well.
Okay. Prof, in wrapping up MDGs, I still want to copiously quote DSG. She said that she gives it a half full and other half lessons learned from it, not having had more inclusive approach to it and not having addressed much fundamental issues that are needed to reinforce things like health, systems, mortality, education, service delivery, and eradicating poverty. Now, somebody said in one of the reports, 10 years is like yesterday or tomorrow. And we're talking about decades of action, and 2030 is just by the corner. Are you worried?
No, I'm not worried. Actually, in your intro, you should have made the point that she was very instrumental for institutionalizing one of the best monitoring mechanisms for the MDGs in the world when she was appointed in 2006.
Okay.
And I happened to work in a network she set up where civil society actively participated in monitoring these processes to make sure that things that are said in paper actually really existed on the ground. And I think it was very effective because it was rooted in what was going on. And gaps could be seen, things that were not happening could be monitored and reported. And the conclusion at the end of that process was that this thing was real, that we are making progress. Yes, the goals were not achieved. But you know what's important for a lot of these goals and targets is that you engage in processes to achieve them. People tend to think, I mean, there's a lot of focus on the United Nations, but take the goal on education. We set that goal for ourselves in 1973, started implementing it in 1976, that every child born at the end of the Civil War, 1970, must have qualitative primary education. Before they came into it, we decided we are taking it to the level of basic education, so the first 10 years. So a lot of these things are commitments we ourselves have made. My position is that we should have really achieved them. But what is always important for me as a realist is that are we making progress in that direction? How can we accelerate the pace of that progress? And how can we ensure that we develop effective strategies to make sure we get to where we want to get to, which is to achieve those targets.
Okay, our phone lines are closed now, and I'll be taking about the last two tweets, and I'll take this first one from Hussaini Danjuma. I'll direct them at the minister and the Governor Obaseki, and it quickly says, what is the position of SDGs on corruption? Because with corruption, none of these goals would be achieved as expected. Starting with you, Minister.
Well, it is very clear that the President, from his first tenure right through to the second tenure, had as one of his major commitments to the citizens that he was going to fight corruption. And this is a fight that is ongoing and has been making very good progress. Now, from the Ministry of Finance side, because we're not a law enforcement agency, we've taken measures to strengthen public financial management. Recently, in December, we launched a transparency portal that enables the Nigerian to visit the portal and see every penny that is being spent by government, right down to the agency that is spending the money and how, what programs or projects the money is being spent for. That is in advancing the commitment of the President. He wasn't only fighting corruption, he's also putting a lot of emphasis on preventing corruption from happening and ensuring that there's transparency and accountability.
Okay. Let me take on Governor Obaseki.
Thank you. From the perspective of...
Besides Edo State, the Governors Forum.
From the perspective of the Governors Forum, we've been working very closely with the Federal Ministry of Finance and the World Bank on programs to improve fiscal governance and transparency, particularly as it relates to, to how we run business as states. Under the SIFTAS program, where the central bank, where the World Bank has given about $750 million to states to help them improve, various aspects of their governance and fiscal governance arrangements within the states, making sure, for instance, that states are able to publish their accounts, their statement of accounts online, their budgets online, to make sure that states have proper procurement systems, proper procurement offices, to ensure that there's value for money for the products and for the things that they procure And you could go down the chain. And in fact, we every month we have meetings. We do a monthly review. We have the peer mechanism within us where we look at how states are doing and see how to learn from each other to improve the services we offer to our people. The truth is that for us governors and for most states, we are under pressure and that imperative to provide more services for our people. So it's not in the interest of the governor to encourage corruption, because if the money is stolen, then the services won't be provided. And the next time you go to the polls or go to the people to ask them to vote for you, they'll ask questions. So there is that commitment by the Nigerian Governors Forum to improve the quality of governance, to improve transparency and the way we do business and the way we keep records and spend public money.
Can you give me an EG from your state?
Well,
Edo State.
Edo State, well, you must understand, we started reforms a while ago, more than a decade ago. Edo and Lagos states are the only two subnationals on the continent of Africa that have been able to access a World Bank, a budget support facility, where the World Bank says, take this money, go and spend it to support your budget the way you want to. And they can only do that when they have checked you out and seen that you have systems in place, that the systems that are transparent and accountable, and that you will actually do what you say you will do. Okay. So for Edo, I think we've crossed that threshold, and we're doing a lot much more with less now.
Okay, before I go to Amina, let me take on you, Prof. Now, I normally will ask this: mobilize for elections. The umpire will not have relevance if the electorates don't come out. You're of the private sector. Speak to the private sector. Is it possible, if they are apathetic about all this, won't go anywhere?
No, I'm not from the private sector. I'm from civil society.
Okay.
There's a difference.
Please go ahead.
Is it related? Big difference.
No, but I think the point really is that everybody is a stakeholder in the process of governance. Whether you're private sector, whether you're civil society, whether you are communities, you are all stakeholders. And the key word in all this thing is carry everybody along. Make sure it is participatory. Make sure that people engage the process, are part of it, are listened to, and their wishes are acted upon. So I think it's really a sense of everybody marching together to achieve the same objective.
Okay, before I allow the last few minutes to Amina, let me take this last one. Nosa Omede. SDG is being discussed. The caliber and capacity of the guests is top-notch. Kudos to all of you. The intelligence of questioning and follow-up is excellent. NT has moved up a notch, and they are programming with unbiased reports from all states. Those are the reports we saw there. Like they say, pictures don't tell lies. Quickly, to you now, more or less like a cap-up. What hope, what assurances, looking at where we are heading to 2030?
Okay, but maybe I just quickly say something, because you didn't ask me about corruption. Goal 16 is all about strong institutions and the rule of law, and that is to set an enabling environment for it. But let me just say, across the world, there is no monopoly on corruption. It happens everywhere. Different degrees, different places. It's the checks and balances that you put in place. I think one of the great challenges we have in our country is that we need to find a way to stop celebrating corruption. People who are corrupt are celebrated, and that needs to stop. There needs to be an implication for it, and I think this government is trying to do what it can with it. As we look forward, this is a decade of action, and it's a call to action for all stakeholders. It's not just about government. It is about you individually and collectively, how you support a vision that is going in the right direction to achieve the SDGs, to encourage the scale-up, to find the opportunities, to look for the solutions, to involve young people, and make sure, as Prof has said, the inclusiveness is what will bring people along. They've got to have hope that includes them and their aspirations being achieved. So I think that's, for us in the UN, we are 75 years old this year. We will be asking the world, what do you need to see in the UN in the next 25 years? But in the next 10 years, how can we achieve the SDGs? And it must start at the local level. There is no house that will stand from the roof down. It has to be from the foundation up. And that's what we're about, reaching out, call to action, all stakeholders, and let's achieve them. It's doable.
These very poor countries, Nigeria may be achieving, but we have very poor countries that are not able to catch up. What assurance do you have for them?
Well, I think the assurance is that the UN is there to provide a platform, to put a spotlight on that, to make sure that we're not leaving anyone behind. Today we have what we call a multi-country office review to make sure that the support profiles and capacities that go to small island states are getting the necessary support to bring in more investments, to spend that money better, and to make sure that everyone in their populations achieves the SDGs. So the spotlight is on everyone. We are in every country. It's a huge footprint across all the countries. We have 131 offices. With the reform, it's, what do you need to achieve the SDGs, and not what does the UN need, but what do countries need, and to try to make sure that we do a better job.
Thank you so much, Amina Mohammed.
Welcome.
UN Deputy Secretary. It was nice having you on Tuesday Live tonight.
It was great to be here. Thank you, Nigerians.
Governor Baseki, Edo State Governor, representing the Nigeria's Governors Forum. It was nice sharing your time with you.
Thank you.
And Zainab Ahmed, Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Professor Jubil Ibrahim, Senior Fellow, Center for Democracy and Development. It was nice having you.
Thank you.
To our viewers, thank you for your tweets, and thank you for your calls, your questions, and also knowing fully well that decade of action is here. 10 years is just like tomorrow, but with adequate planning, we'll get there. That's it on Tuesday Live tonight. On behalf of all of us, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.